All right, I think I did it. It says we're live.
Yeah.
So, right.
Yes.
Good. Hello,
Yes.
Beth. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
We are on, this is like an emergency. Like, I was actually doing other things, and you texted me and said, dot, 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 something. It's an emergency. RFK Jr., autism, the White House. And so I came running back home, and here we are. So,
Uh,
yeah. So,
yeah,
Beth,
that's absolutely it.
thank you for being that type of a friend. I'm Jenny Gage, and you're on the Under Her Eye podcast. And I hope that you're all having a really blessed day. We're having some good weather. And today, I'm not going to introduce the topic. I'm going to start off by introducing the man behind the topic that's causing such a controversy that I came running home in Crocs too. They weren't even good running shoes, so that I could get here as fast as I could and hop online with Beth. Um, oh, you should introduce yourself. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine. Hi, I'm Beth Magnetic. I have a channel called Death by Patriarchy, but for the most part, I'm posting on Under Her Eye podcast right now. But I am a nerd. That's basically it. I am all about all things true crime, history, eugenics, anything where the patriarchy and the existing systems are harming marginalized communities. So that's me.
The patriarchy thinks that it's extremely benevolent, but it's not always. And I guess we'll kind of touch on that this afternoon. So first, let me just introduce the man behind this episode, and that is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I dug out, and this was just right here on my desk. Like I didn't have to go very far, but I dug out my RFK pin. I guess full confessional time to start this episode. I was planning on voting for RFK. I actually volunteered on our Tucson chapter of the RFK campaign. I loved everything about RFK, and I got a lot of hate for that online. I was constantly under attack on my platform because he's a conspiracy theorist. He's a quackadoodle, and I had people who specifically told me that they stopped following me because I said that I hearted RFK. I will say that he is dead to me now. Can I just say that, Beth? Like,
You
I don't
can
know. I
say
have
that.
mixed emotions about him
Hmm.
because he's a traitor. And I don't know if he's a traitor. I don't know if he's a Benedict Arnold or if he's a mole on the inside working for the rest of us. I have mixed emotions. But when they paraded him in front of everybody at that big MAGA thing and introduced that he was coming over to the Trump campaign, um, I I resigned from the RFK local chapter and blocked all of his emails and ripped up his pictures. And I feel like writing a breakup song. So I know that people, as we talk about this topic, are going to have mixed emotions about RFK. And I'm going to play just one little snippet here of kind of what you hear out there on the street about RFK. And let me see if I can get that up. Then we'll dive in.
Yeah. So the thing is, I feel the same
As the
way.
Health and
I
Human
think
Services
Oop,
Secretary,
sorry.
a
you're fine.
conspiracy theorist, a vile abuser of women. Not that it's a moral affliction, but he is a drug addict who has abused himself for years and years and years, along with everyone else around him. And now he's in charge of the health of America, to make America healthy again. The man who shovels Zins into his pie hole like they're chiclets and he has bad breath. It's all depressing when you really get down to it. And yesterday, he gave this conspiracy-riddled, lie-fueled talk at Health and Human Services, where he besmirched, he maligned, he spread filthy falsehoods about people who are on the autism spectrum.
Okay, so people have really very strong views about RFK, and I feel like almost being that guy in the middle running as an independent, Like now he doesn't have a party. He's a man without a ship. So Democrats and Republicans alike hate him for different reasons. And as we dive into this topic, I don't want people to get hung up on whether or not we love or hate RFK. You don't have to wear the RFK pin. You also don't have to go burn it in the trash can to listen to some of the things that he's trying to shine a light on. And as we just focus in on this autism topic, one thing during his campaign, when I was working on his campaign, that really jumped out to me was this. He worked as an attorney going after companies, pharmaceutical companies, companies in healthcare, and he had access to top secret documents that aren't disclosed to the public, that I can't just get online and Google. And that in some ways made me think that he does have a little bit of knowledge about something, or that at least he saw something that made him passionate about, if he doesn't have the answers and doesn't think that we have the answers, wanting to dive into this because he represented those clients. So don't get hung up on RFK and whether or not you love him. Let's talk about autism and what's being done in that regard. So Beth, over to you.
Ooh, all right. So I want to preface everything that we're going to talk about here with, it is such a hard time for the autism community right now. And so gently, I want everybody to understand, we know about Victor Perez in Pocatello, Idaho, who lost his life in a police not knowing how to deal with the autism community situation. We know about the Arizona House GOP and all of the things that they are doing that are horrifically impacting the autism communities, that will result in children having to be sent out of state to live in institutions because they wanted to double their own income. They wanted to double their own pay and their own budget for their department by 500%, their pay by 100%. And despite there being enough money in the budget. So I want to, as we go into this conversation, acknowledge it is such a hard time. And there are people like me who are terrified of myself or family members being sent to wellness camps that we're afraid would actually just be like conversion therapy camps, where they'd be trying to convince us that oh no, you don't have these problems, right?
So Beth, will you tell us, because I know, but people listening to it won't know, why do you care about autism?
Yeah, so I did have that as my next note.
Okay.
So I am autistic. I have been diagnosed with autism. I was diagnosed back in June 2020, maybe 2021. Anyway, I have 2 kids who have been diagnosed with autism as well. So I have a 12-year-old daughter who she would be diagnosed with level 1 autism, formerly referred to as Asperger's. I have a son who he has what's called level 2 autism, and his autism is genuinely life-threatening. He does something called eloping, and kids who elope like my son does, they have a 17% mortality rate, which is higher than the average childhood leukemia rate. And so people need to understand that, I've had somebody say to me just today, somebody said, oh, but autism isn't a death sentence. Well, actually, if you have a child who has a certain expression of autism, they're more likely to die because of that than they are to die of childhood leukemia. There's certain types of leukemia that are higher, but the average across the board is 15%, whereas eloping at 17%. So
I think that's really important for people to realize, because autism, okay, so you're going to have some learning disabilities. You're going to struggle in the classroom. You may be difficult to parent, but while autism itself is not going to imminently lead to your death, eloping, is that what you call when he runs out into the street and stuff?
Yeah.
And tries to get away? They call it eloping?
Eloping. Uh-huh.
Like that seems like it's romantic.
It sounds
like
cute,
I'm gonna
right?
run away and get married, but he's gonna run away.
Yes.
Like I've been in your home when he decides I'm gonna run away out this back door to the pool, and we're both there to grab him. But if you were upstairs in the bathroom for 30 seconds, I don't know how you pee.
Guys, I want you to think about me every time you pee, or genuinely. I want you to think about me every time you pee. I want you, when you are in the bathroom, to think, oh my goodness, if I had an autistic child who eloped in the time that I am going pee, they could have run away and gotten so far away that they could have died, right? So people need to understand that there are expressions of autism that are absolutely life-threatening. So now, one of the things, so I actually went to lunch with a friend today, Jenny, and we were talking about this RFK situation. And we were both saying, like, I haven't listened to the whole thing in context. And so, but the sound bites that we heard, we were outraged by. And so I came home and I've listened to it. I feel better about it now.
Good.
I still have issue, and I will have a hard time trusting a man who joined the Trump campaign forever.
I know. Is he dead to us? Is he a Benedict Arnold, or is he a mole on the inside? I don't know. But he's the only person currently who's talking about autism and who's trying to get answers and trying to raise awareness and get help. So,
right. And there's this really delicate line, because I think that it is critical that we are embracing autism acceptance, because my family has not shown up for my son hardly at all in the last 2 years. And ableism, it's real. We do need to be accepting. And we need to be talking about things on a deeper, more authentic, open conversation level. It's just such an emotionally charged topic that it's so hard to do. So I was telling Jenny, like, I am probably more afraid to do this episode than anything I've ever done online.
I was afraid, like, oh, let's talk about Lori Vallow, or let's talk about Tim Ballard or somebody else. But autism and RFK, like, instantly, like, I don't know if I need that type of bullying in my life. I don't know if I can handle that. And I think that anytime something has been canceled as a topic, and there are conspiracies that grow around it like black mold, it can be really difficult to clean up that topic for public consumption again, because, that's moldy. We don't want to touch it. And I feel like that's a lot of what's happened with autism and vaccinations. We've almost turned it into white noise and an unsolvable problem. And I'm just happy that somebody's looking at it through new eyes. I think that we need to kind of power through that and start to discuss it again and start to look at it, because as somebody who's about to turn 51, I have seen this autism epidemic, as RFK is calling it, bloom and blossom and then explode in my own life. And it's mind-boggling to sit back and see the numbers and see the impact that it's having in schools. I worked as an aide one-on-one. My first job after I escaped my Mormon trad wife life, my very first job was as an educator. I was working as an aide in a classroom. And then they assigned me to be a one-on-one aide to an autistic child. He was a first grader. And it was such an eye-opener to me, the things that he struggles with. Basically, my job was just to be his lifeguard. I was by his side from the minute he walked in the door of school until the minute we got him out the door in the afternoon. I sat by his side as his lifeguard to make sure that he didn't poke his own eyes out with a pencil, to help him try to do some work and make sure that he could just get through his school day, and try to incentivize him to do things. And it was so overwhelming to think, how will he cope in third grade, in fifth grade, in seventh grade? How does he cope as a 25-year-old, as a 30-year-old? Something has to be done in regards to autism, because these are people's lives that are impacted, and there's this fallout all around them of families and systems that are impacted by this epidemic.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that, like, it's become so taboo to say that you want to do anything to improve your child's autism. It's seen as you are being ableist. It's seen that you are not loving and accepting of your child. Let me tell you what, you are going to be damn hard pressed to find somebody who's more loving and accepting of their child. And we are on our way to dropping 20 to 30 grand to be able to help to treat a disease that my son has, that he is more likely to have because of autism, right? And so anyway, we'll get into that. But so I just want to acknowledge that like it's so hard to listen to things in their full context right now when we are in this highly charged state. Everybody's nervous systems are traumatized. I'm not judging people. Like genuinely, I saw that there were like video clips that were supportive of the autism community in Arizona, and I had a really hard time even watching those because even the ones that were on my side, it's so emotionally charged right now. And so I'm not judging anybody for like the thoughts, feelings, and emotions you might have on this. So just know that we're going to be talking about things and we're working to have a nuanced, open conversation where we're actually digging into the topics. And so we're going to say some things that you might disagree with on both sides. We're probably going to piss people off on both sides a little bit here. But we have to start having these conversations. Lives depend on it. So when it comes to RFK, I personally, I agree with his hypothesis being that that environmental factors impact autism. I don't agree with the thesis that environmental factors cause autism. And so this is just a really important distinction in my mind. So I'm really glad that we're able to start having these conversations, but I am terrified and frustrated by the rhetoric and possible results of this particular administration being in control of oh well, it says this, so then what? What's the outcome?
They come in with
from
so
these
much
conversations?
bias all the time that like I don't know if they can weed through the bias. So the argument right now, RFK and people in his camp, and I have no opinions. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a god. The argument on the one side is there is an environmental cause of autism, vaccines being one of those culprits, one of those possible culprits. Then the other argument, and you have the National Institute for Health, you have the CDC, you have medical doctors across the world saying autism is genetic. And somewhere in the middle, you have, I think maybe where I would fall if I were to really dig deep, a combination of the two. Now, with genetics, there was an interesting thing. They did the Human Genome Project and they isolated different genes, and they could see if you have this gene, then you're going to get breast cancer. If you have this gene, this is the gene for heart attacks and strokes. This is the gene for dwarfism in your family. These are all the different genes. The Human Genome Project was groundbreaking, and all of a sudden you had people going out and getting genetic testing to find out, am I going to get breast cancer? But as the years went by, what medical researchers found was that if you had that breast cancer gene, you only had something like a 2% chance of getting breast cancer. Yeah. So then everybody was scratching their heads. And then the new wave of genetic research, once we had mapped all of the sequences, the new wave of genetic research was epigenetics. I have one of my besties. I need to introduce you guys. He is a primary researcher. He runs the genetics lab at a huge university in Mexico and also here at University of Arizona. He's a nutrigenomics professor and genetics scientist. And he has done decades-long studies into epigenetics. Epigenetics is I have the gene, but that gene is like a little light switch. You know, if I go over my light switch on my wall, if I want the light, I'm going to have to turn on the switch. If I want it dark, I turn the switch off. And those people that had the breast cancer, that switch could be turned off and they never get the breast cancer. But under the right circumstances, that switch gets turned on, they have breast cancer and they die. And so this epigenetics study, I think, is not being dialogued about enough in regards to autism. And I think that that's maybe the missing link, the crucial factor that RFK talks about, other people are talking about and looking into, that combination of the two. That yes, genetics has something to do with it, and yes, environmental factors, but those two have to come together somehow and impact. And that's what people have a hard time leaving space for as we dive into these conversations. It's got to be one or the other, right? But it can be somewhere in between.
Can I get you to pop up the screen real quick? All right. So one of the things that we have to talk about when it comes to autism is that everybody always talks about it like a spectrum, like it's left to right, and it's not. There's a bunch of different traits of autism, and your degree of that trait impacting you in your life, it might be lower for one person than it is for another. And so we have this variety of different traits here, right? And so on this one, this person, their fixations are higher and their aggression is lower. And their abnormal posture is much higher, right? So here's the thing, is that this person was going to have autism no matter what, in my opinion. Like, it is genetically there. However, the environmental factors can come in and they can trigger some of these to manifest in a bigger way. And so this is such an important part of the conversation, is it's not making it so that you have the traits. The environmental factors aren't going to make it so that you suddenly have the tics and fidgets. But it might make it so that you are more likely for that to show up, or it might make them so that they're showing up more frequently or in a more pronounced way. I know this, we'll get into that part of it, but there are certain things that we have to recognize. Now, another thing, Jenny, you can take it down now. Jenny, you and I, we both have something called mast cell activation syndrome. And mast cell activation syndrome is something that it makes it so that you're allergic to everything on the planet.
Everything.
It's so fun. Now, this is something where it's due to us having a thin or non-existent blood-brain barrier. Now, an autistic person is more likely to have a thin blood-brain barrier, which makes it so that those environmental exposures impact our brains in more profound ways than it impacts other people. That's why we'll have sensory overload. That's why we'll have meltdowns. That's why we'll have some of these traits that are uncomfortable with autism. And we have to recognize that, like, okay, I am just going to call it like I see it. I disagree with RFK that the environmental factors cause autism. I can see that the environmental factors could make it so that they are manifest in a way where we're able to struggle with it in a more profound way. And so it's a symptom. It's not the root cause. And he's sitting here talking about getting to the root cause, and he's not getting to the root cause if we're digging into the environmental factors. He's getting into what's causing the symptoms. So, yeah. Did you have any thoughts on that, Jenny?
Just a couple so I wanted to read a couple of these comments here. So Daniel, you guys, thank you so much for being here and engaging in this conversation, because I think it's important for people to be engaging in these conversations. Autism's in your genes at birth, period. For those who carry the gene, it's either dominant or recessive. It's not caused by a vaccine, and the most environmental could do is activate a pre-existing gene. Yeah, that's what we're talking about, and it's epigenetics. It's genetic expression specifically. And when you look at the numbers with autism, it is an epidemic. In California now, they are saying that autism, 1 in 20 boys is diagnosed with autism. It was something like 1 in 1,000 15 years ago. And so what you hear a lot of people talking about, yeah, do you have that? You hear a lot of people talking about how that this is because they're diagnosing it so much more now. Again, I'm 51 years old. I did not have anyone anywhere in any of my classes that had any of the symptoms for all of preschool, kindergarten, elementary school. Kids didn't deal with these things. My partner Kev, he's been an educator this is his 27th year in education, and he talks about the number of kids that have these autistic symptomologies that he did not have. They didn't exist. It's not that they weren't diagnosed, it's that they weren't there. They didn't exist in the classroom 27 years ago.
And part of that argument, though, is that they weren't allowed in the classroom. They were at home with their parents. They were in institutions. They were in group homes. They were in these places where they weren't seen in the classes. Whereas now we have the ADA. So I think it was 1994. that the ADA went into place. And that's when disabled people were finally allowed to be in the classroom, and legally mandated to be allowed to be in the classroom. And so there's a lot of nuance to this conversation that we have to
Absolutely
bring to the plate, right? Okay, so I do have this clip about the stats. If you want to bring that screen up.
here. Sorry.
6. Since the first ADDM report in 1990, which was 1992 births, autism has increased by a factor of 4.8. That's 480%, I believe. The first ADDM survey was 22 years ago when prevalence was 1 in 150 children. In all the core states, the trend is consistently upward, and most cases now are severe. So about 25% of the kids who are diagnosed with autism are nonverbal, non-toilet trained, and have other stereotypical features, head banging, tactile and light sensitivities, stimming, toe walking, etc.
Okay, so he's talking about how we're seeing so much more of it. And he ends up basically saying that, well, we'll talk about where he goes with this. So he mentions basically that 25% of the boys who have been diagnosed with autism, that those impacts are severe on them. So one of my big beefs with the neurodivergent world is pretending that severity and difference in how autism manifests isn't real. I need everybody to recognize, this is where people are going to get mad at me right here, Jenny. So if my son and I are both injured and we go into the ER and I need a bunch of stitches and he chopped off his arm, who are they going to take care of first? Who has the greater need? Okay. Mine can be taken care of by, just any general doctor in the ER. He's going to need a trained, specialized surgeon to deal with his situation. And so nobody is denying that I need stitches. Nobody is saying that by saying, oh, sorry, we got to take care of the guy that has his arm ripped off first. Okay. And so that's one of the things that people have to understand. I mean, some people are just never going to get there for me, but we have to recognize that there is a severity and that my child's is life-threatening, point blank. And so I have to treat this very different than somebody, my daughter, hers is not life-threatening. And so their needs are very different. And so they get very different help.
Mm-hmm.
Pretending that severity of autism isn't real is killing kids. We have got to cut this out. Let me see. So then let's see, he talked about the prevalence in autism, which is something that, we talk about the idea that it's being diagnosed at a higher rate because we actually are able to diagnose it. We're recognizing it. I got an autism diagnosis where I would never have gotten an autism diagnosis 20 years ago, right? So we have to get into the reality, according to RFK, is that the numbers actually genuinely are much higher now. So here we go.
Autism diagnosis, that the autism prevalence increases, the relentless increases, are simply artifacts of better diagnoses, better recognition, or changing diagnostic criteria. If you look at Table 3 of the ADDM report, it's clear that the rates are real, that they are increasing in the last 10 years, which is the beginning with the first one. Year by year, there is a steady, relentless increase.
Okay. So that's what he had to say on that. And then he starts to talk about the environmental exposures. But one of the things that we do have to talk about is the history of autism in America. Asperger's became a diagnosis. I think it was 1994. This is all off the top of my head, so it might be 96. It's in that range. But we didn't even have this as a diagnosis in the 80s, right? So of course that's going to increase. We do have to recognize that. We do have to acknowledge that. And it would be really interesting. I think that a lot of people are diagnosed with autism now that would have been diagnosed with things like mental retardation back when I was a kid, right? They would have been diagnosed with a variety of different things that were not called autism. So we have to acknowledge that, but is there an increase? I guess we'll have to actually look at that data he mentioned and see what it actually says. All right, and we're not going to do that today, guys. We will do that over on my channel, Death by Patriarchy. Dig into some of these details.
Sapphire says that her brother does the eloping and he's 30.
These strips completely. Yep. That's my boy too. So, all right, and then let's get to this next one. So this is where we start talking about environmental exposures.
This epidemic denial has become a feature in the mainstream media, and it's based on an industry canard. And obviously, there are people who don't want us to look at environmental exposures. And so I want to just read you some of a little excerpts from some of the older studies.
Maybe
baseline for autism in this country was established with the largest epidemiological study in history. A study of all 900,000 children in the state of Wisconsin.
Okay, so he gets into the frequency of it there. He goes back to that, but when he talks about environmental exposure, and Jenny, you and I were just talking about how you and I both have mast cell activation syndrome. You and I have learned firsthand about methylation, about histamine overload, and about the types of things that causes. So for me, I was actually diagnosed with bipolar 2, and I tried misdiagnosed. I was misdiagnosed with bipolar 2. And then I ended up getting diagnosed with mast cell activation. I was still trying to treat bipolar 2. At that point, I was having allergic reactions to every single medication that they kept giving me. They told me it was all in my head, and that, this is just a normal thing that people with bipolar do, is they do whatever they can to get off their medications. But I literally had anaphylaxis to my medications.
Yeah.
And so I ended up going for allergy testing because I was allergic to my boyfriend's cat, found out I was allergic to literally everything. And Jenny, you're like, oh, I know.
At Christmas time, do you remember when I was vacuuming up the flocking like 3 months ago from our Christmas tree, and there was a hole in the vacuum hose, and within 3 minutes I was anaphylactic and in the hospital from breathing the dust of the flocking of my Christmas tree.
Yeah.
I did not know that you could be anaphylactic to a Christmas tree, and I was. And I almost died. So mast cell activation it's a fun one. Like that's just
wild. It's wild. So,
it's like special.
So we have this methylation issue where our body isn't processing anything appropriately. And so we get this histamine overload. We have severe allergic reactions to things. But what people don't realize is that histamine can cause things like psychosis. It can cause things like mood disorders. It can cause a whole gamut of health issues. It can also cause things like sensory problems. It can also cause things like panic that makes you want to run away. It can cause so many OCD. It can cause so many things. And so this is something where there's environmental exposure that then gets in your body. There's a histamine response. And the thing is that this is seen in people with a thinner blood-brain barrier, which we see with people who are autistic. So anyway, I started to treat that mast cell activation syndrome, and I have not had a single bipolar symptom since. So anyway, my son is very lucky because my son has a very privileged dad. We are divorced. My son has, secondhand privilege because of that. And so
Mr. Magnetic is the best ex-husband. Like, he's the only ex-husband that I currently am rooting for of our whole entire friend group. He's just amazing. Like, he's sweet,
a great
he's
ex-husband.
kind. He's really focused on making sure that you're okay and that your son is okay. Like, he's a good ex-husband.
Yeah. And so we've been able to pay out of pocket for specialists that insurance does not pay for. Right. And so my son, he's been able to go to the Amen clinic and different neurology clinics and that type of thing. And we've been able to get answers that 99% of autism families will never get. And this has actually inspired me to start a developmental disability nonprofit going into the homes of families who are having a crisis or who are preparing for a crisis, like their child's about to have surgery or close family members about to pass or situations that are going to cause a crisis for this family.
How do people find that? Can we put a link in the description?
Sure. I will give you a link for that. Okay.
And either to donate or however you'd like to interface with that.
Yeah. That would in donations so that we can get this going would be incredible. But that's the thing is that my family, I have now seen the things and the services and the treatments that exist out there that most of the world do not see when it comes to treating things that go along with autism. It's not going to make autism go away because autism is just a neurotype. It's how his brain is wired. It will help with a lot of the extra things that make it way, way harder.
The uncomfortable symptoms, like the side effects of autism.
Yeah. So, well, and in addition to that, like those environmental contaminants, they don't cause the autism. We've talked about this. This is my theory. I'm not a scientist, but there's plenty of scientists who will back this up. They don't cause it. They do contribute to it. So, for example, viruses can go into an autistic person's body and impact them completely different than somebody else. So it's estimated that up to 30% of autistic families or autistic children have something called PANDAS or PANS. PANDAS is pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorders associated with streptococcal infection. This is where a child gets strep. And then overnight,
right?
It goes to your brain. The strep goes to your brain. Overnight, suddenly you have severe OCD, severe behaviors. At one point in time, it was actually called exorcist syndrome because it looks so much like what they thought demonic possession looked like.
Oh my goodness.
Isn't that wild? And so that's what my son has. We were only able to find this out because of tens of thousands of dollars in testing. And PANS is similar, that where it can come from the flu, it can come from mold, it can come from COVID, it can come from like basically tons of different viruses. It's pediatric acute onset neuropsychiatric syndrome. So it causes major psychiatric symptoms and issues, right? And so these are not environmental factors. I mean, mold would be, but they're viral, right? It's an outside thing that comes in the body and then makes the existing thin blood-brain barrier due to autism so much more of an issue.
So just to be clear, when RFK, and again, I neither support nor don't support RFK. He's just talking about autism right now and is spending a lot of money to dive into this. So I am not in any way supporting the man at all. This isn't a political discussion. When RFK talks about toxins, he is talking about viruses also. Toxins in the medical community. And I was reading some of the medical papers that he was referencing before we got on today. When he says environmental toxins, that can also be strep throat, that can be mold, that can be COVID, that can be a variety of different viruses. bacteria, etc. So toxins is all of those. It's not just vaccines. It's not just like paint or fumes from exhaust. He is saying anything externally that's non-genetic is considered a toxin. So
Okay, thank you
yeah.
for that detail, because that really kind of pivots my feelings on this. So
Yeah, because I was reading, like, as soon as you texted me, then when I got off of my Zoom call with the producers, I sat down and tried to read some of the medical articles that are behind this, and that's what toxins means. He's not just saying
Okay.
vaccines. He's not just saying paint fumes or plastics or, our shampoo or toothpaste or anything like that, amalgam fillings. They are referencing bacteria, protozoa, fungal
Okay.
infections, viral infections, etc. Those are all under the
Fascinating.
toxins umbrella. So part of
Okay.
this research, like, I feel like it's a fairly broad net that they are casting to see what is it that's turning these genes on and causing these problematic symptoms for people that really impact the quality of life long term. And why are the numbers going up? Because yes, if a certain subgroup of our population always has that autistic gene and our brains are wired in that, I don't know, some people say it's a disability. I think it's kind of like a superpower sort of way, depending on how you look at it. Why are we having these problematic symptoms and an uptick in the harder to deal with manifestations of autism at a rapidly growing rate according to the data?
So I think I think that there are two words that RFK could have used differently in this whole thing that would have changed how I felt about it all. One is caused or causes. We're not causing autism. He should have said exacerbates. And then the other word, well, here's a quick clip. All right.
As well, autism destroys families. More importantly, it destroys our greatest resource, which are children. These are children who should not be suffering like this. These are kids who, many of them, were fully functional and regressed because of some environmental exposure into autism when they're 2 years old. And these are kids who will never pay taxes. They'll never hold a job. They'll never play baseball. They'll never write a poem. They'll never go out on a date. Many of them will never use a toilet unassisted. And we have to recognize we are doing this to our children.
Okay, so that obviously that's the clip that triggered people the most. Tomsters from our Exmo space.
Yeah.
Do you want to share again? I have a video from him on this.
I love the Tomsters.
I have a few videos, so I'll just try to breeze through these so that we're not here much longer. But here we go.
So apparently RFK Jr. is talking about autism again. Surprise! Oh. It's like saying, "Oh, the sun rose into the sky."
Oh my goodness!
Today, but apparently he said some things like this. And as
okay, well, that video is not going to play for us, but he goes on to say, "I'm holding down a job. I'm doing this. I'm doing this. I'm doing this," and I think we really have to talk about this because the reality is that, like, love that for Tomsters. I love that for me. I love that for a lot of people who are autistic. But the reality is that, like, it's not it's not happening for my son unless this extremely expensive treatment changes things, which we actually believe that he could possibly have a job now, which we didn't believe was possible 6 months ago. So yeah, my other word that I had beef with was destroys. So it doesn't destroy families, it harms families. It might isolate families. It might, but these are systemic issues, in my opinion.
Yeah, they are systemic issues. I will say I worked in a school in a financially vulnerable area, and several of the autistic kids in our classroom, it destroyed their families. the families didn't have the resources to get the kids the help. It destroyed marriages. It destroyed lives. It destroyed everything because of the lack of the resources. So again, that's a systemic issue. Our tribal decay, the lack of resources, the escalating inflation, and the inability for people to just afford a normal everyday life anymore is certainly going to make that more difficult. And sometimes I think that it's up to interpretation. Like, was he saying like autism destroys lives? Or was he saying that autism can be destructive in communities? So yes, you and I have had more privileged lives probably than some people, and it's difficult for you. Imagine truly not even having the money to pay your rent every month and not being able to function the way in which any type of, if, something that you have to struggle a little bit more to cope with can absolutely destroy lives.
And I think that this is part of the important piece of the conversation is, so when you actually study eugenics from the early to mid 1900s, you find out that the reason that scientists abandoned eugenics was because they started to realize that there were societal factors that were leading to these outcomes, not just the genes. And so
we don't have tribes. We don't have community. You're there taking care of JJ by yourself all the time. You have a couple of tutors that come in, but even like being in your house for an hour, the way that you have to lifeguard every second of everything that he does because he runs away, where's your relief? Where's the aunts and uncles and grandparents and neighbors and the tribes that would come in and cope with anything that's outside of the normal, that needs a little bit of extra attention? Autism and so many other things, it doesn't exist anymore. So yes, it can be absolutely destructive to families because our society and our systems have completely broken down. And yeah, I really like that Lucky says that even in more privileged families, it can still mess stuff up. It can be really difficult to deal with anything that's out of the ordinary. And some of the kids that I'm thinking of, some of these little kiddos like JJ that have really severe autism that impacts every minute of their lives, it can be really, really difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. And so,
but then also I like what Daniel's saying that it can be stressful, but this doom narrative he's putting on it, going, it destroys lives. Same kind of rhetoric a certain group in Europe did. Yes, absolutely. And that scares me because it's coming from MAGA. Like, it does terrify me, like where it's coming from, like the source of it kind of worries me just a little bit. But I know families' lives specifically that are, I think that they would say that not only is their family system and their finances and their minute-to-minute lives very difficult, and I would say that some of them might say that their lives have been destroyed, but the heartbreak that they have that their children who are severely autistic have to cope with some of these really painful, really difficult things, that is a real factor. I know that
I will never have
things.
Yeah, as we've talked about this, I will never have a traditional career. I will never have an easy way to make income because I am the primary caretaker for my disabled son. And so we have to start to recognize these and recognize the impact that our society and the way that our society is set up is having on families, and the way that society is treating us as people and treating our children. That's leading to these families being ripped apart. That's leading to divorce. That's leading to the way that, lives are being harmed. But yeah, the divorce rate of families with kids in the home of autistic kids, it's 23.5% versus 13.8%. So there absolutely is a higher rate of that. He's just not using language that I think is affirming of the community to talk about these things. So anyway, I know you have to run, Jenny. So
it's such an interesting conversation. So do we love that RFK Jr. and the White House is digging into the autism epidemic? Do we hate this? Do we think that anything's going to come of this? What do we think about this?
I am not a fan of MAGA doing it under any circumstances. I do not trust.
I feel like they're going to use it to take over America, and like I keep seeing us all being put on trains and sent somewhere.
That's my fear, right? And so
I'm not even a conspiracy theorist at all. Like, I'm not that type of person. You guys have never heard me say anything like that. But it's like,
I am 100%. Yeah. I'm 100% for us having these conversations. I'm 100% for our country doing something about this. Our medical system, our psych system, our system for autism is trash, but I don't see this as a step in the right direction. I see this as an important conversation, but I don't see the people in power doing the right things with the information. The agenda. Thank you, Kim.
Mhm.
Oh my goodness, that's exactly it. What's the agenda? That's my problem here.
So, and the respite available and things like that. One of the
Mhm.
things that I was thinking as I was listening to the RFK speech about it that you sent over, I don't know the numbers of the amount of money that they're going to spend, but you've already had some of your services for JJ taken away here
Exactly.
recently, and now your financial help.
Mhm.
And again, it's a full-time job. Like sitting in a restaurant with you and JJ for 5
Yeah.
minutes is like, I can't chew my food because like he's this little bumblebee and I'm afraid that he's just going to run out the door. Like
People think like, oh, just tell them to sit down. I saw a comment on a post about Victor, who lost his life just recently in Pocatello, and somebody had said something about like the police need better training, and somebody said the parents need better training. Oh my God. If
Yeah,
you
and
think
again,
that,
that's tribal decay. That's tribal decay. The parents are not supposed to be the ones who care for any of these type of situations. Our American nuclear family system having the breakdown. We don't have the aunts, the uncles, the neighbors, the tribes around us. We've outsourced everything. We're paying for everything, so people don't help one another anymore. It shouldn't just be parents responsible for everything. It's not your fault. It's not your responsibility. This is tribal decay. Our systems are broken. It's disgusting. America is kind of the laughingstock of the world in regards to our tribes, our interconnectedness, people helping other people. We just don't do it anymore. There's somebody out there who has a business that they're running that's going to babysit your kids and do your wedding, and everything from cradle to grave has been monetized and hijacked in the name of capitalism. And it's not the parents. The parents are still like, as the breeders in the society, we are bearing all the brunt of everything, and it's not okay.
yeah.
So I am completely not okay with anybody saying that. So many mixed emotions about RFK. I do wish that before they started digging into the root cause and spending the bajillions of dollars that they're going to spend on whatever it is that they are digging up, I wish that they would first look at, let's say we don't know what the root cause is. What are the issues that families like yours and individuals face, and how can we support that? How can we build infrastructure around something that's not mysterious? You need respite. You need help. We need third spaces that we can take some of these, like working in a classroom. I knew that these autistic students of mine, they were going home to parents who were at work, and they didn't have any of the things that they needed to live happy lives. There is so much that we could throw money at that we know would give us outcomes. And I'm just not certain that starting with dumping all the money into let's find the cause, I don't know if that's a starting place.
One of my opinions, and this would require our system to make these things covered by insurances and whatnot. I believe that when a child is being diagnosed with autism, they should be being tested for things like PANS and PANDAS. They should be automatically testing for these things. The same way that when Jack was getting diagnosed with PANDAS, they tested him for 100 other things to rule all the other things out to make sure that this was actually what we were dealing with. And so, in my opinion, they need to be looking at this and they need to be testing for medical issues that could be contributing, not just slapping the label autism on absolutely everything. And I think that systemic issue is largely contributing to this issue.
So they're going to look at our vaccines. Is there a virus? But are they going to look at broader issues? And is anybody looking into the infrastructure and the support around people who currently have autism?
We're going to fix the problem, but we're not going to actually do anything for the people who already have it.
And I think
Great.
that it definitely needs to be both. And I think that
We're
that
gonna
was my
call-
takeaway from watching RFK. I wish that in his speech he had ended it with, and oh yeah, we're super sorry that we've just yanked a bunch of funding out from under families who currently have autism diagnoses and are dealing with this. We're really sorry, and so we're going to give back that funding, and we're going to see, you know, like a two-pronged approach.
And what I would really, really have loved to see in this conversation was for RFK to say, we want families whose children have been diagnosed with autism. We want you to know that we know that you are not parasites just trying to feed off of the system. And he should have called out what Elon has been perpetuating about how people like me and my son are just trying to bleed the system dry and milk it for all it's worth.
You know who's bleeding the system dry? The people at the top who now own planet Earth. So homelessness didn't exist in the old days because, I mean, even 100 years ago, because you were just homesteading. You would just go somewhere, and now that's where I'm going to build my log cabin and live. And now the billionaires own everything. I saw data this week about first-time homebuyers and the problem, the epidemic of people not being able to buy houses right now in America. And 15 years ago, the average age of first-time homeownership was 29 years old. Then it bumped up to 32 years old. And currently today, it's 38 years old. The average home price nationwide, and I know there's so many different areas, so it's kind of funny to like look at an average home price on a national level. But the average home price is $400,000. That's the national average. And less than 70% of people can afford a home. The invention of owning land, putting fences around things and saying, I'm a billionaire, so now I own this. This is my property. Nobody else can own this part of Earth. And then mortgages, I can no longer just build my cabin and then I'm done. I never have to pay for this anymore. All I have to do is like put chinking in the wood every summertime after the rain and I'm good. The fact that we are paying mortgages to make the bank owners and Wall Street and all of the investors, everything that we have going on in this inverse late stage capitalistic system is absolutely disgusting. And the only parasites on our system are the people at the top that have done this to us.
Amen.
So,
yeah. Oh, thank you for hopping on at the last minute with me to have this conversation, Jenny. If anybody wants to hop over to Death by Patriarchy, I do have a lot coming out soon on autism, eugenics, Germany in the 1930s and 40s.
Do we want to read that, or is it just going
content.
to terrify us? Like, I'm kind of like, I don't know if I can read about Joe in the 1930s right now. Oh, Joe's on here. Hello. Joe is my co-founder in our atheist church, the Church of Korahor. And yeah, Joe ordained me as a pastor, which is something that the Mormon church never would do. So I had to leave the Mormon church, start my own church, which has grown in membership here the past couple months, and become an atheist to be ordained as a pastor. So thank you, Joe, for believing in women.
Hi, Joe.
We believe in you. So
yes.
Yeah, lack of affordable housing is a big thing. All right, Beth, if anybody wants to find you, you are over at Death by Patriarchy. You guys, thanks for hanging out. Daniel, I appreciate all of your comments. I certainly think that autism is something that we need to look at, but as humans, we should first be looking at how we can support those around us. And I also have a big problem, Beth, as you know, with us looking to the government and people out there to do stuff. I'm more of a like do stuff right now with the people around me type of girl. As you know, I'm running a whole entire crisis management team for a real life person that I didn't ever anticipate doing that. Go outside, knock on your neighbor's door. If you have a neighbor like Beth who has a son like JJ, Beth, what are some things that people could do to help you and your autistic son?
Yeah, so his name's Jack. You're thinking because we've been talking about Lori Vallow,
No, I'm calling him JJ because I don't like to say his real name. I protect identities.
Oh,
yeah.
My goodness. Okay,
I was using a fake name. I was protecting his identity.
My bad. Thank you, Jenny. I'll remember that from now on.
I've been watching all of these training classes in social media influencer protections for kids. So
as far as helping my families in particular, we will put out a link for the fundraising for the nonprofit that we're working on getting started. So we'll have that here shortly. But honestly, go find the autistic people in your neighborhood, your relatives. Go just bring them dinner. Go clean their bathrooms for them, go help them with something. Because I promise you that if there's somebody who's like me and their child has severe autism, they are drowning and they desperately need social connection. They are on a deserted island all alone trying to survive, and nobody will come around because they don't feel like they can handle being around autism. We desperately need our people. We desperately need help. We desperately need just like the little things that people judge us for not being able to keep up with. It's so hard. You want to help me? Go help somebody in your community.
Do you know what I did for a single mom? This HelloFresh meal kit. I just asked her because she had a little 2-year-old, and I was like, I want to do something to help you on a consistent basis here for like, I'm committing 6 months. And she said, food is my biggest struggle. I don't have time to food prep, and I get really sick of like the fast food. So I found this HelloFresh was the one that I used. We're not sponsored by them or anything. They just had like really good, easy to prepare, the big recipe card. I actually asked on one of my groups, and like overwhelmingly everyone was like HelloFresh, and it cost me maybe like $50 a week. I did 2 meals a week for her. So one day a week, this little meal box was delivered where she had a breakfast and an easy to cook dinner. And she said that it was absolutely life-changing. So I did that for her for 6 months. If you have an autistic family, maybe look into something like that. I think that the meal box can be really good. And in any way that you can support, pull some weeds.
That would like make me feel so loved. Yeah, missionaries are coming Monday to mow my lawn for me because I have anaphylaxis to my grass. So
we're so fun together. You're anaphylactic to grass. I'm anaphylactic to latex and Christmas trees. So, all right, guys, thanks for hanging out with us. This will be posted later, and we'll always be hanging out in the comment sections. Beth, you're amazing.
You are too. Thanks, Jenny.
Have a good day, guys. Bye.